going to live on berries, right? So we're going to eat with the monkeys. How do we survive? We fight an ancient enemy, and the ancient prayers, the ancient weapons we use are best. We want to bring to bear all the weight that the church has over the centuries. Recently, as I was going through what Z had sent me, okay, this is these are the talks that we do. This is the order that we used to do these talks, etc. That's basically the order of the inner logic of the book that I brought that I just got published. I'm not trying to sell books. I'm here to sell Jesus Christ.
Amen.
I'm here for souls and not sales. Okay.
Amen.
So, and I was talking to some of the brothers last night. Okay, tell me more about your charism. Tell me more about your order. And if I had to sum up the Brotherhood of St. Dismas in one way, it would be live the Catholic faith, right? Do all the things that it takes to become holy. Pray together, consecrate to the Virgin Mary. If I could bring a message from my sponsor, right? Father already, he and I had the same sponsor, corporate sponsor, the Virgin Mary. Consecrate to her. Take that consecration seriously. But men, as a general rule, need liturgy, we need ritual, we need brotherhood. That's what we need. We need liturgy, ritual, brotherhood. So people often ask me, I need this special prayer, how do I pray this prayer, how do I get out of this situation? At the end of the day, the demon responds to the imposition of order as much as to the prayers themselves. So imposing order is absolutely critical. I was talking to Oz Ranger Hook. We were talking beforehand about the Rogers rules for Rangers. So I was writing this book, and I'm going to get into the first topic on sin. I was writing this book, and it needed to pass Father Ripperger's peer review. It needed to get the imprimatur from my bishop and Nihil Obstat from a Thomist in Rome, and it needed to be readable for the average guy. So it was quite a task. Have you ever seen the movie Jumanji, when they released the monkeys? When you're writing a book about the devil released monkeys in my head and in my study. So I was going through my old army box, and it just happened upon my old Ranger handbook, and it says, the first line on it says, "Not for the weak or faint of heart." Not for the weak or faint of heart. And so I opened it up, and I brought back to my memory all the rules, Rogers rules for Rangers. These original guerrilla fighters. And let's face it, we're behind enemy lines. We got to watch the monkey. We got to learn how to eat the monkey. We're behind enemy lines, and we've got to survive. We're in crazy times if you haven't figured it out. Okay, I largely fast from the media. I check every day. I read the Bible, and I read a little bit of the Catholic news just to see what both sides are up to. Right. I want to see what the world's up to, and I want to see what the church is up to, and I want to see what God is up to. But I'm going to leave you with my wife. My wife always tells me, "Don't be negative. Don't be negative. Give them, bless them. Don't depress them." Fair enough. So I'm going to bless you and not depress you. Okay. So I've read this book. I actually have a PhD in biblical studies. Okay. So I've read this book a few times. I've read about the fathers and all that, and I've read it from front to back multiple times, and I can tell you, in the end, we win. Okay? We win. So have hope. Have hope. Amen. Rogers rules for Rangers. His very first rule, these are guerrilla fighters. The Rangers to this day still use them. I have a copy of them right here. Rogers' first rule for standing orders, don't forget nothing. So when I would submit that, and the publisher, the editor, would send it back, and they would say, "Don't you mean don't forget anything?" And I said, "No, it's don't forget nothing." Okay. The first rule, though, the first rules for Rangers, he says, is that every Ranger is bound by the rules and articles of war. Every Ranger is bound by the rules and articles of war. I'm going to give you these rules, and then we'll get into some of the biggest temptations that we fall into as men. Rule number one, I'm going to get into this afternoon on grace. Rule number one, the demon's going to yield or not yield, not based upon my looks, my PhD, right? Or my anything, my car. He's going to yield or not yield based on three rules. Number one, does this person have the requisite authority over the person, the place, or the object? Right. I was in Austin last week, I said, and so I was explaining this rule, and I said, it's not based on somebody's looks. If a demon yields, what's the name of that one priest that does that Bible thing and he's kind of handsome and all the women said, Father Mike Smith. And I said, oh, Father Mike Smith. Yes, that's right. The demon yields to him because of the order, because of the authority he has as a priest. The demon yields not because he's good looking. He doesn't care about us. We're meat sacks to him. He's going to bend and yield to authority, first of all. That's something we're going to get into this afternoon. You've got to understand your authority. You want to fight this fight. You've got to understand your authority as a man. Something that the world is radically militating against, a man's authority. Number 2, the demon's going to yield or not yield based upon the state of grace, your merit, the merit of the petitioner. What is the depth of holiness? I could have complete authority, but if I'm not in a state of grace, the demon's not going to yield. I've seen it. I've seen a demon one time not yield to an exorcist, one time. And I find out 2 years later that exorcist was compromised. He's now no longer a priest. The demon's not going to yield if you're not in a state of grace. That's the plus P in the round that you fire. And finally, what is specifically asking? What is he specifically asking? The demon responds. The demon's a lord from hell. He's going to respond to what we're at. Prayer begets what it signifies. What are we asking? I went to zero in my hunting rifle a couple years ago. I drew a big deer hunt. And there was a friend of mine who was a Marine sniper. Any Marines here or no? Thank goodness. I knew this was a good group. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, there is at least one.
There's one squid here.
Yeah, puddle pirate here. There he is. So the Marines are so weird. They write a poem to their weapon, right? This is my rifle. There's no other rifle. So Rosier, this guy's a sniper. He's real deal. He's an operator. And so we're zeroing at 300 yards, and he says, next time we come, I'm going to show you how to see the air movement behind the bullet. I was like, wow. He said, the real killer on a sniper team is the spotter, not the shooter. And these guys can actually, they figured out how to see the air movement behind the bullet. So we go to the 45 range, the pistol range, and so we pull we're shooting 45s, and I was a helicopter pilot. I was a gunship pilot. You know, we just blew stuff up, you know. And every 7th round was a green tracer, so if I was off, I just walked it in, you know, it didn't matter. So when you're on the ground hand to hand, you got to be accurate. So he says, he fires 3 rounds, of course, 3 bullets, 1 hole, you know, crazy psycho Marine. So I have, you know, I think I had 2 holes and then 1 dirt movement in the back. So he's not even looking at me, and he says, hey man, move your right thumb up 3/4 of an inch. Wow. I said, okay, sure, I'll try it. So move my right thumb up, pull, boom, boom, boom. Nice shot group. He says you're holding your weapon wrong. You're holding it like a wheel gun, and the slide is hitting it. You got to get that thumb out of the way of the slide. Wow, that's precision. Spiritual combat means precision. So I hope over the next day or over today to kind of give you some precision on how in the spiritual life, some precision, some DDT, some devil defeating theology. Every once in a while, I will cycle between Desert Storm Dan and Dr. Dan, okay? But since this is a red meat group of alphas, I'm going to largely focus on what we need to do to survive this battle. This is a briefing. This is a military briefing for spiritual combat, okay?
Amen.
All right, Shackelford. You ever heard of Shackelford, the explorer? This is an ad that he allegedly ran, looking for ads for the Endurance, I think was the name of the ship. He says, men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. Just sums up the vocation of husband and father, the vocation of priest. That sums it up. Honor and recognition in case of success. That honor and recognition is a crown. What we receive in heaven. But we were in Austin last week. You know Jesse, he's a character. I don't know how he gets away with the stuff he gets away with, but he does. So he's leading this this rosary, you know, and I'm like a warrior. I'm in prayer. I'm going to pray the rosary. Got 1,200 people kneeling and praying the rosary. And Jesse gets to the fifth glorious mystery he's talking about, and everybody has a crown in heaven. Everybody has a crown. Mother Teresa's crown is so big, they have to carry it in a wheelbarrow. He says, but most of us, our crown, It's going to be a Burger King crown. Burger King crown, I'm just trying to pray. When I first got involved in about 9 years ago, I was asked to be involved in an exorcism team, and maybe we'll talk about that this afternoon. I was getting crap beat out of me. And so I finally yelled at my guardian angel, you know what I mean? And he yelled back. And I finally said, slow the punches down. Right? He will tell you that the more you progress as a fighter, the fight is slower, especially when you're coaching. It's very slow. When I watch tennis, it's just like this. I have no idea what's going on. But I watch a boxing match, I'm like, okay, watch this. He's getting ready to set him up here. This is happening here. It's slower to me. It's even slower to a guy that's had tremendous experience. So slowing the game down, this is part of the precision of spiritual combat. Slow it down. Ask your guardian angel, slow it down for me so I can see the mechanics of sin. I can see where the enemy's holding. And at the end of the day, the enemy is going to enter in through sin, and he's going to hold through some heresy. This is why it's important to be conformed. St. Paul says, conform your mind. Be transformed in the renewal of your mind. You must think from the heart of the church. You must yield. Every case of possession that I've dealt with, every single case of possession, there's one Marian heresy. The demon is holding behind one Marian heresy. In every case of possession, there's a Marian heresy, and there's one level of unforgiveness. Unforgiveness of God, unforgiveness of themselves. How did I let this happen to me? Unforgiveness of someone who hurt them. The demon's going to hold through that. And he's going to hold through sin. He's going to enter through sin. So the first talk today, I want to talk a little bit about some of the temptations that we face as men. The subtle temptations, the 3/4 of an inch movements. The first opening line of the Rule of St. Benedict, and I'm a Benedictine oblate. He says the first word is what? Listen. Listen, my son, to your master's precepts. Incline the ear of your heart. Proverbs 9 or 4:20. Incline the ear of your heart. Obedience, put your ear, obey. The first word is obedience. Receive willingly and carry out effectively your loving Father's advice, that by the labor of obedience you may return to him from whom you have departed, by the sloth of disobedience. Spiritual life is work. The Benedictine motto is pray and work, or et labora. When you work, make it prayerful. Everything you do, every prayer you do, every act of work you do is prayerful. When Father Ripper's first read on my book came back, I used the word surrender. Surrender. And he says it's not surrender, it's conformity. The word in tradition is conformity of wills. So I read Claude de Colombier's books. The trustful surrender to divine providence is all about conformity of wills. I could sit in the military, the commander could call me into his office and say, Schneider, get over here. I stand at attention. I want you to do this. Okay, I'll do it. I might hate it. I'm going to cuss him up and down when I leave when he doesn't hear me. I'm going to complain, but I'll surrender. Conformity is doing it because God wants you to do it. Do it because God wills it. And finding at every single moment of our lives is an opportunity for grace, offering every single thing up. But this struck me as I was kind of preparing for this. The sloth of disobedience. The sloth of disobedience. The Greek word for sloth is asadia. You heard this before? Asadia. Asadia is a nasty, nasty demon. It means, the Greek word asadia means carelessness, indifference, weariness, listlessness, not caring or be concerned with one's position or condition in the world, not fulfilling your duties, right? Some of the signs or symptoms are bodily or psychological. A sadness, a spiritual sadness can overcome you. Asadia. It's also known as the noonday devil. Have you heard of the noonday devil? So the soldier's psalm, Psalm 91. You will not fear the arrow of the night, or the arrow that flies by day, nor the demon that prowls at noon. In the monastic life, between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, after the work hour, when the monk gets private time for Lectio Divina and prayer, he gets hit with this listlessness, this, I don't want to do this. So that demon is still around, the noonday devil. You shall not fear the terror of the night, nor the daemonio meridian, the noonday demon, Psalm 91:6. The monastics would consider asadia the most deadly of the 7 sins among in the early church. Restlessness, dissatisfaction, vague feelings of unwellness, sadness for no apparent reason. Every case that I deal with, the first thing we're dealing with is asadia, a sloth, a spiritual sloth, a carelessness. I don't want to do this. I don't want to get up and do this, right? What happens when you're in the Ranger bat and they say, I don't feel like getting up today, Sergeant. Is it okay if I just sleep in? Get up. Yeah. And we'll keep you up all night so you're good and tired. So then tomorrow night, then you'll be able to sleep, right? So what we find again, the demon responds to the imposition of order as much as to the prayers themselves. We were talking about Exodus 90, right? I think Reuben is involved with Exodus 90. That's a powerful bodily discipline. What you guys are doing, fasting, giving up meat on Fridays, praying at set times every single day. The demon responds to that as much as to the prayers themselves. So that breaks asadia. What I've seen working with cases, if you look at warfare, you always have, before we send in our heavy infantry, you would have light infantry, you would have skirmishers, cavalry, and then you'd have your tanks, what now would be considered tanks, the heavy infantry or tanks now. And they would disrupt. The cavalry were there to disrupt, to run screen lines, to break the enemy's formation, to loosen the target for the big guns to go in. Asadia works like that. It makes us to stop wanting to pray. It makes us to stop wanting to pray. St. Thomas Aquinas calls it sorrow about a spiritual good. We're just kind of sad. We're kind of sad. It whispers in our ear, you'll never be holy. This is too hard. Right? If you hear that, this is too hard. This is too hard. Why are you guys going? Don't go to that retreat this weekend. USC plays Notre Dame today, right? Yeah. By the way, I went to Notre Dame, my undergrad. Did you know why? Oh, thank you. Do you know why most students choose USC over UCLA? Because it's easier to spell.
I went to
We're going to
graduate by somewhere.
Oftentimes it'll divert your attention to something in your past, undue focus on things of the past, shame, unforgiveness, some wound in the past, or it'll project you too far forward into the future and then fill you with dread, anxiety. This is a nasty, ancient demon. And you break his back through discipline. That's how you break it. So having a disciplined prayer life, remember, men need 3 things. They need ritual, liturgy, and brotherhood. And you break it through the discipline of ritual, getting up at the same time. St. Catherine of Siena, doctor of the church, said, everybody should pray for 30 minutes a day. Everybody. Unless you're busy, she said. And then you should pray for an hour. And I don't know anybody here that doesn't have 20 or 30 other things that we could be doing today to get it done. But we're here. Right? You're here because of 3 things. You've made 3 really, really dangerous prayers. Okay? Number 1, teach me the truth. Number 2, make me holy. And number 3, use me. If you pray any one of those 3 prayers, the Holy Virgin Mary will hear that. And she's going to put you in. She's going to gear you up. She's going to put you in the fight somewhere. But then when he gives you this temptation, either to despair or this hopelessness over your past, this shame over your past, this dread, or the dread of something in the future, he offers you an escape. Internet, Netflix, social media, pornography, alcohol, drugs. And the demon really doesn't care. I mean, there are going to be other demons animating those things, but Asadia is going to hand you off to him and say, I've got this target softened, now you go and do your work. And he doesn't really care. There's not necessarily a demon of addiction, per se. The demon's like an older brother bully, right? When if you have an older brother, my brother was in the Navy, so I bullied him. Right? The older brother holds you down and then starts using your arm and punching you and saying, why do you keep hitting yourself? That's what the demon does. He lets, go ahead. You like porn? Go ahead. Beat yourself up with porn. Oh, for you it's liquor? Good. Go for it. Beat up. You it's overworking? Fine. Overwork. I don't care. Come up with some obsession. Because the demon's constantly driving obsessive thinking. He feeds and fuels off the trauma. So we've got to figure out how to integrate trauma. I'm going to talk about that when we get to the point on suffering and prayer. So he's going to feed that. And a psychological obsession, an addiction or anything else, can develop into a spiritual oppression or even spiritual obsession very quickly. Very quickly. You're vulnerable. You're vulnerable. He watches for that. This is an interesting quote that I was in a talk with one of Father Ripperger's key mental health counselors for his group. And he said something very interesting, that 30 minutes of cogitated thinking, front brain thinking. The back brain is all the dread. The back brain is looking to your past. The demon hovers back there in the back of the head telling you it's never going to change. It's always going to be horrible. Your wife is never going to come into the faith. Your kids are always going to be screwed up. Your grandkids will never get baptized. He's going to make you try to focus on all these things. And this is what Dr. Joe Lopetsky says. 60 seconds of cogitated front brain thinking, meaning focused thinking on any topic. 60 seconds of that has the equivalent of one dose of antidepressant or anti-anxiety meds. We're one of the most over-medicated groups in society. What did Freud say about Catholics? He said they're the only people that don't need psychotherapy, particularly the Irish, right? Yeah. Right?
Irish.
Who? Fighting Irish, right? So front brain thinking. Now imagine when that front brain thinking starts attaching itself to Jesus Christ, meditating on his wounds. Imagine the power that brings. This is how you break it, through prayer. The demon of acedia has active and passive tactics. On the active side, he's going to give you all the reasons why you shouldn't pray. Oh, you're tired. Oh, you need to do this. Oh, did I leave the window open? Am I cold or am I hot? Should I put my slippers on or take them off? He's going to give you all the reasons. Just get to work. You can pray later. Right? God's angry at you. He's not going to listen to you anyway. Right? On the passive side, he wants us to feel like this is a waste of time. What a complete waste of time. Right? Don't even do it. It's a waste of time getting away to pray. And how do we do it? We break it. Whether you feel it or not. Whether you feel it or not. You know that as husbands and fathers. Whether you feel it or not, you get up every day and do your work. Same thing with prayer, whether you feel it or not. So he's very content with ordinary Catholics who go through the motions. Sunday Mass, domingueros, right? Go to Mass on Sunday, confess once in a while, right? If you say you're going to go to confession every month, you'll end up going every 3 months. If you say you're going to go once a year to meet the obligations of the church, you'll never go. If you say you're going to go twice a year, you might go once a year. Chances are you're going to slip into mortal sin. Make it a commitment to confess every single week. Every single week. And if you don't make it, you'll get back the next week. You have to make that commitment. Now, how are we doing on time? 15 minutes. 15? 15, okay.
That's it.
All right.
That's it.
Okay. This is St. Alphonsus Liguori. So when the demon of acedia sets you up, one of the biggest things that we reach toward is this, right? That's why I put the sacred art here. I put Jesus pictures to remind myself, keep Christ first. The last rule of St. Benedict, prefer absolutely nothing to Jesus Christ. But once he gets you weakened down, once acedia has got you beat down and weak, then impurity comes in. And we have such immediate access, right? Whereas when we were kids, if you wanted to look at porn, you had to shame yourself and buy it at the gas station, or even worse, go into the dirty videos. Right? They had the old theaters that closed down. The dirty bookstores came in and put dirty videos. Pee Wee Herman got caught there. You know? May God have mercy on his soul. So
The Pussycat Theater on Lancashire.
exactly. Yeah, strip clubs, whatever. I remember I was back in Ohio a couple weeks ago, and we were driving down in an old neighborhood, and I just had this memory. I said, I remember there was a strip club right here, and there was I was in high school, and there was an older, in his 20s or 30s at the time. He said, the guy told me, I said, hey, have you ever been to a strip club? And he said, let me I don't even know if he was even Catholic. He was Catholic, but I don't know if he went to mass, but he wasn't like he was evangelical. He just said, stay out of those. The scum of the world go into those places. thank goodness that man had enough guts to speak the truth to me. Here's what St. Alphonsus, he calls impurity hell's widest gate. We have now to speak of the fourth gate of hell, which is impurity or sexual sins. It is by this gate that the greatest number of the damned enter. Some will say that is a trifling sin. Is it trifling? It is a mortal sin. St. Antonius writes that such is the nauseousness of this sin that the devils themselves cannot endure it. Moreover, the doctors of the church say that certain demons who have been superior to the rest, remember their ancient dignity, disdain tempting to so loathsome of sin. Consider how disgusting he must be to God, who, the sinner, like a dog, is ever returning to his vomit, wallowing like a pig in the stinking mire of this accursed vice. The impure say, moreover, God has compassion on us, who are subject to this vice, because he knows that we're flesh. This is how I say it in the book. The demon only works in the objective. He only works in the objective. You committed this sin. Lord, he committed this sin. What does it say in Revelation 12? The devil stands before the throne of God day and night accusing the brethren. Objectively. But what does he project to us? God understands. He knows that you're weak. You've had a hard day, Mijo. Like God has Mijo syndrome. Anyway, so he's saying God doesn't have Mijo syndrome. God wants you to live and work in the objective. God has compassion. You must know the most horrible chastisement with which God has ever visited the earth has been drawn by this vice. The most horrible chastisement upon mankind, says Doctor of the Church, Saint Alphonsus Liguori. This vice has drawn down the wrath of God. St. Jerome says that this is the only sin we read that has caused God to repent of having made man, for all men and flesh have become corrupted. There is no sin, Jerome says, which God punishes so rigorously even upon this earth as this. He once sent fire from heaven upon 5 cities, etc. You say God has compassion upon men subject to the sin, but this is the sin that sends most to hell. St. Remigius says that the greater number of the damned in souls are damned through this vice. The human race, St. Bernard and St. Isidore, the human race is brought under the power of the devil more by lust than any other vice. This is something this is one of the weapons. Again, you get weakened by the skirmishers, and then he comes in with the heavy tanks. And then once the tanks are in, then the slaughter is on. St. Thomas, who builds on St. Gregory, calls pride the queen of sins. Pride, the queen of sins. And that the 7 deadly sins are generals of the enemy's forces. The 7 deadly sins have demon generals that run these forces. Now, if you want to see an interesting video, Father Ripper goes through the 5 princes at Satan, the 5 demon princes that run the table, what they call the table of demons in hell. It's a really fascinating explanation of what's happened to our culture. But the 7 deadly sins: lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, melancholy, which is acedia, wrath, envy, and pride. According to St. Thomas, each general has an army of other vices working in him, which he refers to as his daughters. So once one of the capital vices enters into the heart, it calls forth an army of corresponding sin and vices. So the light infantry come in, they break the forces down, the heavy tanks come in. In today's society, and from the beginning, it was impurity. Once that hits, now that's when they send in the cavalry for cleanup. In ancient combat, once the infantry went through and the enemy turned, right, that spot is called the tropaion. That's where we get the word trophy. It means, the Greek word means to turn. That spot where the enemy turns, that's where the line breaks. And when the line breaks, the slaughter is on. The slaughter is on. And that's when the cavalry comes in. That's why the cavalry sword is a lot longer than the short sword of the infantry. So they would go in on horseback and they would slaughter the enemy, open slaughter. So there's some of the daughter vices of lust. Now think about this in today's culture. Now it used to be, pornography was largely a male phenomenon, but now I think it's almost equal, women and men looking at pornography. St. Gregory the Great, another doctor of the church, said when the general of lust has given ground to the soul, he brings with him 8 companion vices. So these are the companion vices. Remember, we've been studying the enemy for a long time. I'm just giving you a cav report. That's all my book is. It's a cavalry report on how to get out of this mess. This is what the enemy does. This is how you counteract it. This is what he does. This is how you counteract it. If I go fight around and I come back and this side of my face is completely swollen and red, and what are you going to tell me? No! You're going to say, Dan, you're so pretty. You got to defend that prettiness. You got to get your left up. Keep your hands up. All right. So here they are. Think about this, particularly our young men today. The 8 companion vices of lust. Number 1, blindness of mind. Impurity blinds the mind. It blinds us. That's all we think about. It's all the mind gets focused, this psychological obsession. Everything is filtered through this lens of filth. Number 2, thoughtlessness or inconsiderate towards others. Right? Whenever I go to a gas station and I see some tough guy sitting in the passenger seat and his girlfriend's out there gassing up the car, I want to introduce his face to the hood. I got to be honest with you. I mean, the old. My dad was the original Gran Torino. I'm the son of the Gran Torino. I want to get out of my truck and I want to say, "Come here, bang, bang, bang. You pump the gas for her, right?" But I don't, because I'm a nice guy and I'm a college professor, and you can't do that. Imagine that headline. Stupid old professor introduces a guy's face to the hood because he wouldn't pump the gas for his car. But if I see somebody, if I do see a young man pumping gas, opening a door for a woman, it's either a new car or a new woman, right? And I get that a little bit. I like my truck. They wrote a song about that. I love my truck, right? Number 3, inconstancy. So blindness of mind, thoughtlessness, and inconstancy. Inability to control emotions, thought in relation to the events of life. Look at the mental health collapse among young people today. As you see the mental health crisis going this way, it completely parallels the use of pornography, the rampant use of pornography. Number 4, rashness, which means precipitation, behaving too quickly or rashly without thinking. You know, the people that are hooked on porn, no thought. It's just boom, 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 pure instinct. Because if I can't master that lower instinct, I can't master any movements, right? If you can't control that, you're never going to control, you're never able to quit smoking pot. You're never going to quit cussing. It took me 3 years out of leaving the military to stop cussing, right? Because that was just part of the language. If I'm not serious, I'm not cussing. If I'm serious, I don't cuss until I'm serious about this. So, inconstancy or rashness. Number 5, self-love. Self-love. Think about this. Here's me celebrating with my, we're obsessed with ourselves. Self-love. Number 6, hatred of God. Eventually, again, first comes in, breaking us down. Asadia gets us to fall into this despair over the past or over the future, this listlessness. I don't want to pray, so we stop praying, right? Whenever a priest, we've had multiple cases, I've had several cases that were actual priests possessed. First question I ask them is, when did you stop praying the office? Right? That's the first thing. The demon's not going to make me stop. I mean, I pray the office every day because I'm an oblate, but none of the penalty of sin. I'm not bound by canon law. A priest is bound to say mass every day and pray the office. But they break you down by making that exception, leading you to hatred of God eventually. Love of this. Well, another thing, I asked this one priest, he was addicted to pornography and masturbation. I said, so, I didn't realize you were homosexual, Father. I'm not homosexual. I said, well, tell me, the hand that's grabbing you, is that a male or a female's hand? He was like, oh. As soon as I said it, I was like, I probably shouldn't have said it. But I think I got his attention. If you need a motivation and center, the next time you're tempted to impurity, think what old Dano from Ohio had to say. Look at the hair on the back of that hand.
Yeah, that's good.
Number 7, love of this world. Affection for this present world and over-attachment to worldly things and events. Over-attaching to worldly things and events. Now, I'm not going to blow, what do they say, smoke up your skirts, right? Because there's no skirts in here. The world's a mess, right? The time of chastisement, the question isn't if, it's when. Israel's on fire. The church is collapsing from within, right? That doesn't change me at all. That doesn't change my beliefs at all. In fact, it makes me dig down. So don't waste your time. Don't get drawn into emotions and waste your emotional space on temporal things. Don't trade in your spiritual space and goods for temporal things. You gotta know what the world's up to. You have to be prepared and aware. But don't fall into the trap of falling into despair over the world or over the conditions of the church. Stay in your lane. In the military. Stay in your lane.
That's right.
Right? This is my lane, that's your lane. Stay out of my lane and stay out of yours. Our lane as laymen is take care of our families. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And finally, an abhorrence or despair of the future world, dread or despair of the future, a lack of hope in God. A lack of hope in God. And so this capital vice convinces the conquered heart to continue to engorge itself in pleasurable goods, especially sexual pleasures. The demon, however, doesn't stop there. The same spirit of lust creates a host of other defects in the soul, including thoughtlessness, affection for the world, dread of the future, emotional inconstancy, and even hatred of God. And I'll finish with this. I'm going to finish with one more doctrine of the church. St. Bonaventure. Why does God allow the demon to afflict us? Right? The Catechism says that all of human history has been one of dour combat. Right? Dour combat with the forces of evil. All of history. Going back to the garden, it's the same old shoot 'em up from the beginning, the same temptation. Eve gets trapped and tempted to something pleasurable. Adam is silent. And it says in Scripture, and he was with her. Adam was with her. Right? He should have stepped in front of her and said, "Over my dead body, serpent."
Yeah.
So why does God allow it? St. Bonaventure says, God allows the devil to attack us for 4 reasons. Number 1, to reveal God's glory. To reveal His glory. When you conquer the addiction to sin and pornography and masturbation, you glorify God. You make that demon no longer active in your life and the life of your family. And here's what I've told other guys too, struggling with pornography addiction. And I'm not here to beat you up on that. Again, I'm here to give, what did she say? Give them blessing, bless them, don't depress them. Okay? But I'm going to challenge you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is not some sort of vision of, I think it was St. Francis, one of the saints, very sweet, and their prayer was roses flying out of their mouth to God. I'm going to give you warrior prayer. Right? I'm going to teach you to fight like a warrior. Because when I leave here, I want you to go, oh yeah, I want you to cinch up. You know what I mean? What happens if you don't cinch up your parachute and you get in an aircraft? You don't cinch it up? Ooh. Yeah, you'll be singing in alto choir next time. I want you guys to cinch up. You know what I mean? To reveal God's glory. Beat this demon of impurity. Beat him out of your life. But you got to knock out his buddies. You got to knock out sloth. You got to stay disciplined. Even if you don't feel it. Nowhere in the tradition of the church does your feelings have any indication of your relationship with God.
Good. That's good.
Why do I have peace with God? Because I went to confession this week. I'm in a state of grace. That's why I have peace with Him. Not my emotion, not what I think. The demon's going to drive you to the subjective, but he only works in the objective. So to glorify God, beat that demon. Because you're not the target. You're not the target. Your marriage is the target. And once the demon can separate you and your wife, and his first thing is going to do is project and change the way you perceive and see each other, then he's going to get you to stop praying. And once he gets that division between the two of you, your children are the target. Your children, starting with your daughters and their purity. That's a harsh thing. So if you can't quit this addiction for you, quit it for them. Get that shield back up. Get that shield back up. Number 2, to punish sin. God allows us to attack. God allows the demon to afflict us also to punish sin. Because He's a loving Father. He chastises those that He loves, it says in Hebrews, right? He punishes sin because He loves us. Right? I got a buddy, he's a good guy. His parents were super liberal, and in the 70s, do whatever you want. Raise yourselves, basically. And he was feral and godless to this day. Right? You have to discipline your child. And we discipline our own children because we don't want them to be soft, right? But we have, so God, how much less God in his perfect justice? Number 3, to rebuke the sinner. He rebukes us. He's getting a little close. It's like the remember Operation, the game Operation, right? A game that you could never sell today. There would be lawsuits. And can you imagine a millennial getting a piece of metal, pliers, and getting shocked at a game you plug into the wall, sparks come out of the wall because there's no grounding wire, there's no GFI outlets, because you got too close because you wanted to get the femur, But God does it. He lets the demon a little bit in. He lets him in to afflict us a little bit, to rebuke us. Hey, knock that stuff off. And then finally, to educate us. Because when we wrestle with the evil one, we learn, right? We have an exorcist and another in Florida, and he's a judoka, black belt judoka. And once he went to our training, he's like, I am all in. He said, I went through the Pope Leo training, which is fantastic. He said, but it was like I watched every possible video about judo. I did every possible training, but I never got onto the mat and did it. So when you get onto the mat with the enemy, God allows that for a little bit to educate us and teach us how to fight back. All right, so the next session, we'll stop here. We'll go to some questions. And then the next section, we're going to go to prayer, a little on prayer and how we can use prayer like judo and how we can use prayer in spiritual combat, and then into confession. How are we doing on time and questions?
Yeah, 3 minutes for questions.
Okay, yes, sir.
I had a big bout of acedia, like really bad acedia. I have monkish tendencies, so I got into the Desert Fathers, and when I started getting the Desert Fathers, acedia started setting in. And then the Desert Fathers, ironically, are the ones that got me out of it, because Saint Cyclectica said the way to get out of it is prayer and psalmody. So I started doing the liturgy of the hours, and I started doing that. It went away. I work in mental health,